making a video, Draft Science channel and such. Yeah, I really don't, I really don't want to bother on this subject. There's just no point. So anyway, I did this Pyrrho room, attempting to try to find some sort of conversation, you know, some sort of reasonable conversation, and totally failed to find it, you know, on the subject of my theory, essentially. So I don't even know how to contextualize this. You know, Pyrrho says she'll do a one-on-one next time because, yeah, there was obviously people in the room and they just got in the way, from my point of view entirely. But there's really no point in having a conversation with Pyrrho as I think about it. You know, I've made a rather bold claim here, and if you know, just reversing the circumstance, if Pyrrho had made such a claim, I would be acutely interested, and even interested in saying, "Gee, I'm going to make him look stupid." You know, I'll find the flaws in what he's thinking because, oh, how pretentious of him, how idiotic he thinks he's Einstein. You know, he's done better than Einstein. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I would find that intensely interesting, and yeah, I'd watch every video he made on it, and I'd be, you know, and Pyrrho's obviously completely uninterested. He hasn't watched shit worth of my videos, and he makes it obvious. So in this video, he makes two bold claims. First, that it's absolutely been proven that the photon goes through both slits in the two-slit experiment. And then he makes the claim that the diffraction pattern seen in the single-slit experiment is substantially or radically or completely different than the interference pattern seen in the two-slit experiment. Now I can show you a video of a MIT professor who, previous to this, you know, I'll show you this part of the video anyway, because we get into this whole Huggins source bullshit and everything. He says right in this video, they shouldn't be using the word diffraction for the single slit diffraction because it's an interference pattern. So he's, you know, this is an MIT professor. Not good enough? Pyrrho. So I mean, the fact that Pyrrho, even, and I have made videos about the two-slit. I debunked Feynman. You know, he's still butthurt because I won't pay Feynman proper respect for deceiving people with false notions of the reality. Like somehow that's my fault. It's my fault Feynman said it wrong, presented it wrong. That's my bad. No, I think that's Feynman's bad, especially considering how Feynman didn't do, you know, even he did make it to the video age, and you think he would have compiled a little bit more of a personal volume of expressions of his understanding of reality. I would have thought. It is kind of tragic that there's so little left behind. Even Einstein was certainly in the voice recording era, and you think he would have left behind a volume of tapes of, you know, hey, I'm Einstein. This is how my brain works. This is what I think. Nope. I had an aunt, you know, thought she was dying in like the 60s. She lived to be like 90, but it's, you know, she was dying. And she left a volume. I mean, she's talked about everything on Earth. You know, Miles, I got them sitting still on, you know, they're on, you know, roll spools. But anyway, you know, and, you know, she was talking about flowers and shit. Not real. I mean, she was, you know, she was an interesting character. But anyway, this besides the point. The real point is, I just don't, you know, these people are just so obnoxious. So I've already pointed out in other videos, you know, the other people in the room are just liars, and they just keep saying things about me. You know, I need to do this or I need to do that. Like they know how to, what the road to success looks like or is, which is hilarious. And you know, just so pretentious, so obnoxious. Like they know the truth, and so they know why I'm not getting there somehow. You know, just disgusting. And then, you know, they overtly say things that I don't say, like Einstein was an idiot. Well, I don't say that. I say he was wrong. say Feynman was wrong. I've overtly said I like Feynman for a lot of reasons, but they ignore that and then just say I called him an idiot. That's not what I did. Oh, jeez. His analysis of Lesage gravity was just complete grammar school crap. And that's just a fact. And it's held up. It's written, even on Wikipedia, they say this is why it's been debunked, and it's just crap. I mean, is that is it my bad, or is it his bad? So anyway, so it's just, I guess we'll just get to, so Pyrrho just makes these bold claims that are outrageously wrong. I mean, he apparently doesn't know about single slit diffraction. And so how can we have a conversation when he doesn't know just basic things that I'm going to have to, I have to prove it to him in the conversation? Well, I'm not going to do that. So if he's not willing to do any premise work, and the premise work here would be as if you just watch the 1 hour video. Yes, the middle's a little tedious, but you know, it's in there, most of it. And you know, then we can have a conversation. But we can't have a conversation if you're not at all curious to understand the theory at all. And so that's just a waste of my time. So the good news is I think I have found somebody who is worthy, you know, a better man than me, better artist, and you know, just brilliant with math. And so if I can get him to communicate with me, you know, I might have somebody who might be very useful to my purposes. But we'll see how it works out. I'll see if I can nag him into becoming my friend or something like that. Alright, so I'll post a link to the Pyrrho video where the bullshit the subject on, you know, physics starts. And then, you know, it just was so difficult to even get to the subject. And then Pyrrho's never stays on the subject. He just keeps talking about the alternative theories instead of doing what I'm looking for, which is prove this statement that I'm somehow out of bounds. He just keeps arguing rubber bands or bullshit. Stuff that there's no evidence for. Yeah, string theory. Anyway, so let's get to it, the details, I suppose. So Pyrrho basically says this doesn't happen. All right, this is the diffraction pattern from a single slit, and the argument is that this pattern is substantially 8 times perhaps weaker than in the double slit. I think obviously, depending on your slit arrangement, the pattern is not 8 times weaker. It just may be that the central maxima, as measured, is 8 times. But the catch there is in the single slit, the center maxima is twice as large as in the double slit experiment in terms of the space it occupies. So automatically it would be twice as intense, you know, just by logic. So you already have 50% of that 80%, or 50% of 8%. So anyway, so what I was thinking was, so this is the slit at its widest, and so what they say for to explain single slit diffraction interference pattern is that there's this idea that, so let's just pretend there's a slit here that's producing this, that somehow when the photon goes through the slit, it creates what's called this Huygens source, which means essentially the wave splits in half, and now we have 2 waves, or we can have 10 waves, or we can have 1 billion waves, and that creates the interference. Now, you know, that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound logical that you can just make up little teeny slits, you know, just pretend, you know. So essentially what they're saying is take a slit and then just make a 0 size impediment, you know, just next to 0, 0.0000009. Just make a make-believe impediment just so you can create 2 waves, or 4 waves, or 10 waves, or however many you want to, depending on these points. Now, I would argue that this doesn't make any sense. And it certainly doesn't make any sense if you think about this, what's happening in this experiment. If I just make the slit really wide, then all you get is a little round ball from the laser, okay? And so there's a point where as I encroach the slits together, there's a point where this starts. Now, unfortunately in this video, we don't get to see that point. I mean, ideally that would be really nice, is to start with a slit so wide that there's no interference pattern at all. And then just see at exactly what distance you begin to create these fringes. That would be interesting. And then really the game is just that as you make the slits narrower, the fringes get wider. And that's basically what happens. And they get narrower, which is a little bit, ouch. How do you explain that? Yeah, I mean that one gets a little tricky even for wave mechanics. Why would it compress? So I don't have the answer yet. I don't have a great answer yet. It's kind of an answer, but I don't know whether, well, maybe I'll go into it. We'll see how I feel. See how this goes. So I'll play the video. I'm just trying to see if there was anything I had written down that might be relevant to that. Anything else I need to take care of? I guess I did write down a couple of things. Pyrrho said something about I need a wave tank. No, I don't need a wave tank. I mean, I did all that earth science kind of crap in grammar school. I understand wave mechanics. It's just silly. Talk about, let's see. I don't know, another two slit is not a metaphor. Oh yeah, Pyrrho keeps talking about this, like these are metaphors, or this is the philosophy of physics. These are explicit statements being made. People are describing reality here. This is not a metaphor. The two-slit experiment is not a metaphor. My fish analogy is a metaphor. This is not a metaphor. This is idiotic. So anyway. So I guess we'll just go with this. And, I'm just disappointed, right? Because no one's giving me any technical critiques. They're just giving me, they're just attacking my character personally or my qualifications. I don't have sufficient badgery to be, critiquing. It's just absolute nonsense. I've watched enough of this shit to develop a respectable opinion. It's just really irritating. So anyway, another so my argument is basically like this is the most fundamental experiment in establishing the very idea of what a photon is. Now Einstein, 3 years before he died, he basically said, after 50 years, I have not improved my conception of a photon. I still don't know what the fuck it is. And that's a substantial statement, because this hasn't been it just seems that the physics has lost all its integrity in a sense, because it doesn't want to know the truth, because the truth is somewhere in here, and they just don't want to pick at this experiment. They don't want to analyze it. They don't want to play with distances, and they don't want to play with the thickness of the material that they make the slits out. They don't want to play with any of these things. These, like I said, simple things where I just say open the slits all the way until you just have a laser, and then just see how this pattern develops. When this Huygens source all of a sudden shows up. No Huygens source, you have no Huygens source, and all of a sudden Huygens source shows up. Why does it show up? How does the photon know the slits are now in the close enough position where all of a sudden the photon, should start producing 2 waves instead of 1? I mean, it's just... So, just play it. And like I said, the guy, this physics professor says things that are just... You're just like, yeah, he's just assumed all this stuff is true, and he's just not going to sit there and do anything to say, hey, maybe there's a better truth than this much. Nothing. They'll do nothing to see if they can do better. So.
Negligible. Making it smaller. Ah, I'm beginning to see the dark lines. Ah, the diffraction which is taking over. Look at the center maximum. Right there. It's getting wider. It's getting wider. And
well, understand that everything is getting wider and wider. The dark spots, the whole thing, all of it is expanding in its dimensions. So it's as if the focus, it's as if the distance was being brought closer and closer. Although the light is getting weaker and weaker, which, you know, is a real disadvantage.
I make the slit narrower. It's getting wider. It's getting wider. And look how beautiful you see these destructive interferences, where light plus light gives darkness.
Yeah, light plus light gives darkness. And we're talking about theoretically a single photon's creating this. So it's theoretically there's no light plus light. There's a photon, and somehow a single photons would still create this pattern. So it's not like light plus light. And clearly, you know, by the conservation laws of physics, light plus light can't give darkness. The light had to go somewhere.
Wider. Wider. Right now it is at least 10 times wider than it was before.
Right,
now
so
it is 20 times wider.
20 times, 10 times, 20 times. So yeah, obviously it gets, you know, as you get narrower and narrower, with each narrowing you exponentially increase the timesness of the magnitude of the how small it's getting. But the key thing for me right now, as a thought, is just the idea that it has gotten narrower. It is clearly if there was, we can imagine the slit is lengthwise. What's taking place is, so there's an opening here, so we would expect that the original laser light would still be here, that there'd be a cross at some point here or something to indicate that, well, the original laser still is going through the opening and it still has its dimensions. But what has happened is that round laser has been ripped, you know, into this shape. And interestingly, you can see a little bit of a spike in here. I couldn't find my magnifying glass, but you have like little, you know, I mean, I hate to say it, it's almost like the, when you use the iron filings around the magnet, you know, and they line up, you have a very reminiscent kind of tooth pattern here of, like, as if the verticals have been pushed onto their side. So it's as if what you would have had as the verticals from the laser going through the slit, you know, vertically, you know, the vertical components have been pulled down. Now, it'd be neater if they were pulled down in both directions, but it appears like they've only been pulled down in one direction, which isn't very helpful to anything I can contrive as an explanation. It'd be easier to explain if it reflected both slits. I mean, both sides of the slits. But anyway, it doesn't, you know, I'll work on that one. Maybe irrelevant, maybe just an artifact, maybe nothing. But I mean, the idea of this compression appears to be a fact.
And it gets very faint. Of course it gets very faint, because if I make the slit very narrow, not much light goes through. There's nothing I can do about it. But notice how incredibly impressive this is. How white that center maximum becomes.
I don't know why the focus goes bad.
That is very characteristic for diffraction. The narrower the slit.
Very characteristic for diffraction. You know, he said. Didn't say interference.
The wider the diffraction pattern at the center maximum.
But like I said, right before he did this demonstration, he made the point that they shouldn't be using the word diffraction. They should be using the word interference. So, a little irony in there. Anyway.
Now dit is in...
Okay, I think that's it. So, just show the better image, I suppose. So clearly, this is the same pattern as you get with the two-slit experiment. The only distinction is in the two-slit, this central maxima is the same size as these. So you just take off that and move that over, and it's exactly the same pattern otherwise. So the only distinguishing feature is that the central maxima is a double. And that seems logical when you just think about the single slit versus the double slit, where the middle impediment now exists. And you kind of get that, I think. You know, that would create this difference, because obviously in the single slit, the center light just can't possibly be interfered with as much. So I guess what I'm arguing is as the slit gets narrower, what's happening is more and more of the light is being affected by the field lines, the field created by the slit material, by any edge, by any corner. You can almost argue that it doesn't matter how thick something is, it's still going to have a corner. The corners are always going to be exactly the same, no matter how thick a material is. So no matter how thick I make something, the corners are identical. If you just cut those off, they're not going to change. The corners are a corner. So if this, if the substance of this field was created, those corners, you could understand that this is just a representation of what happens as you start moving these field lines of the two slits, and they start invading the space of the light. They're basically like magnets pulling, you know, light out of its that's what's stretching this. So I'm explaining the stretching part at the moment, but what's stretching this is the fact that you could understand that the field lines would have a, you know, they would radiate out. There would be radiation going out this way, let's just say. And let's just call this negative radiation. That means that things will end up being attracted because of this radiation. And you can sort of understand that the ones coming straight would certainly would diffract photons straight. And the ones at an angle would certainly now diffract photons at an angle. And so that's why that's why this image is pulled, is because the light is being affected by a field that has angles, and the angles are pulling things back down to this center. So it'll always get pulled to that center by the nature of the field density, something or other. I mean, again, see, this is where these experiments just need a little bit of tweaking. You know, just do a little bit of, you know, create a slit and have the bottom of the slit, you know, have it open at the top and have this bottom encroaching, and see what you get coming down also. You know, there's just so many ways to play with this experiment, and you know, we just don't have great examples of that. There's some videos that have some, and I've showed some of that. But, you know, for the most critical experiment in defining how you're going to perceive something, so I asked Pyrrho quite plainly, so you can actually imagine light as a wave, because I can't. I mean, I can't for the life of me understand how something goes across space as a wave that doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it really doesn't go anywhere as a wave. How is that possible? It has no dimensionality at all. I mean, it doesn't spread. How is this reasonable? And I'm going to say that this wave comes all the way across space, and somehow it knows the difference between a slit this big and a slit this big. So I could take a photon coming billions of light years across space, a wave front, and somehow it's going to know the difference between a slit this wide and a slit this wide. Come Realistically, I can't make that. I can't turn that into anything I can visualize at all. So yeah, no sale. But I can visualize a checkerboard of stuff moving, pressure, and I can understand that any imbalances in the pressure will cause something to move based on the imbalance in the pressure. That I can understand. So, I don't know if there's anything else I want to say about this, except, like I said, there's no premise for a conversation. I mean, if I have to prove to Pyrrho single slit interference pattern, which he apparently doesn't realize happens, you know, we're just so far behind in terms of getting to any kind of conversation about anything real that there's no point. And again, I've already demonstrated how Feynman made no concession to the existence of this pattern. Feynman talked about the double slit experiment and did not concede the existence of this pattern with a single slit. He's basically stated there's no pattern. When I close one of the slits, the light doesn't do this, it does a big blob. That's what he said, and it's wrong. And many other physicists have said it, and it's wrong. It's not accurate. Again, that's my bad. So, yeah, I just, you know, no point in discussing my theory with somebody not willing to watch a couple hours of video. So, that has to be the, you know, I mean, sorry, but yeah, you have to be interested enough. And obviously Pyrrho's not interested enough. He will watch Ken Hovind videos, though. He's mentioned in his last 3 appearances how fascinating he finds Ken Hovind. But he can't watch an hour of physics. Okay. And I'm supposed to waste my time. No. Obviously, I'm desperate. And so, yes, I engaged in conversation with Hofladay, and I'll engage in conversation with Pyrrho because I'm desperate for some sort of feedback. But it's not rational feedback, so what's the fucking point? So, no moss until I find somebody rational to have a conversation with. Somebody with rational expectations, meaning they understand that they have to watch a video before they can critique it. Yeah. Now it's enough. This camera's a little funky, so I don't know whether it does tend to it's hard to find the middle of the middle. I think there's probably the right angle, but there's no way for me to know that. Well, I'll have to work on that. Sorry about the balancing. So anyway, this isn't the video I wanted to make, but I'm stuck with it. So I'll try to make a more back to the regular subject, and I'll try to get to the parts I need to tighten up and just move along. Try to do piece by piece. I think that's I have to just make 10 good videos on all the sub-subjects, and that'll be the way to do it, I think. But anyway, okay, till next time.